Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Love this. She got what she wanted. You were just trying to fulfill her request, OP. I bet she never did that again, and her tips were probably terrible. Server wanted a big table, so I helped her out. Forgive my possible lack of adequate details. This happened a long time ago, and I don't have the best memory to begin with. When I, female, 43, was 19 or 20 years old, I worked at the local franchise of a popular steakhouse/buffet as a cashier and hostess. On our busier days, table turnover could be insane, and me having to help clean a table to seat was a normal thing. Servers bust their own tables. We, of course, would seat tables that were already clean, but sometimes customers would prefer a different location that wasn't. Since it was a buffet, this wasn't a huge problem. We would clean while they filled plates. On one very memorable occasion, this happened to me with a bit of a twist. I took a party to a clean table in Blondie's section. I don't know how old she was, but I would wager early 20s, and she'd been there longer than I had. Anyway, when we got there, the head of the party said they would prefer a different table, still in Blondie's section, and indicated one that had not been cleaned yet. I flashed my best customer service smile and said it wouldn't be a problem. They started to turn away, and I prepared to clean the table for them. All of a sudden, Blondie rushed up to me and said that table was unavailable and would random other table be okay instead. I explained the situation and that they had chosen that table specifically, but she was adamant. She explained that she wanted that table and another available to merge for large parties. Tips are almost always better with a large group. I apologized profusely to the current party I was seating and asked if the new table would suffice. They assured me it was all right and took everything in stride as they made their way to the food. The next time Blondie went into the dish area in the kitchen, less than 10 minutes later, I followed her in and proceeded to tear her a new one. It felt really weird to be so thoroughly dressing down anyone older than me. I was raised with old school morals and ideas of respect for those older than me, but she had embarrassed me and I told her so. And that what she had done made it look like I didn't know how to do my job. She apologized but held her stance. I was still fuming, so I did what anyone with teenager brain would do. I went to Mom, or rather the head server and her supervisor. I told Mom what she had done and why, and she told me that's fine. If she wants large tables, she can have them. For the next 15 to 20 minutes, every large group that came in was seated in her section. Remember, busy day, so this was frequent. She eventually came up to the hostess stand to ask me to stop. I told her to talk to Mom. Edit. Okay, so a couple of things that have come up. One, Mom is not actually my mom. She was the oldest, longest employed server there at the time, so she was Mom to everyone. Two, I was a teenager, and it was very early in my work history, so I did what I was told. Mom told me to do that. Three, this was definitely not fine dining. If it was, I should hope that we would all have been held to a better standard and the situation would not have been there in the first place. And our second story. Ma'am, I will never open this register. Backstory. 15 plus years ago, I used to work for a well-known point-of-sale vendor. I'd go around and fix cash registers, scanner scales, receipt printers, and almost anything else attached to the register. I would do this in all manner of restaurants, grocery stores, and retail establishments. My company's dress code was business casual, but I often wore a button-down shirt with slacks. As you might imagine, my clothing and position behind a register often led to me being mistaken for a manager. Our story begins in a local Walmart during the blue "How may I help you" vest era. I'm standing at a register with a scanner scale overturned in front of me. I'm wrist deep in the bowels of this scanner scale like some sort of horrible robot proctologist. I'm trying to wedge a component out of the device, and I'm having a rough time with it. I begin to hear and feel some familiar vibrations. I look up and see a middle-aged woman unloading her groceries onto the conveyor belt. I raise my voice a little to be heard over the constant din of checkout all around us. "Oh, sorry, ma'am, but this register's closed." Woman already has an attitude and grins and chuckles like she's got me trapped. I briefly imagine that she squats down next to the lane and scratches her back like a dog. She then continues to unload her cart. "Well, I'm not putting these groceries back in the cart, so what do you think about that?" I nervously laugh at her. She couldn't be serious, so I probe a little. "You realize there are registers open all around us, right?" Woman: "And you're the man that's going to open a register for me." Young, naive me thinks that he can apply evidence and reason to the conversation to encourage her to F off. I then begin to point things out as clearly as I can. I point to the register light above me, which is off. The register's closed. The light is off. I then hold my hands out to gesture at my shirt. I'm not wearing a "how may I help you" vest. I then lewdly thrust a hand into the exposed and gaping butt of the scanner scale, and I'm trying to fix this register because it's broken. Woman finished manhandling a 40-pound bag of dog food onto the conveyor, then turned to me and extended her tusks of entitlement and sneered, "Then fix it. I don't care what problems you have. I have grandkids waiting out in the car." I then briefly saw her face extend a trunk into the air and trumpet a note of urgency to punctuate her point. I quickly recovered from the shotgun blast of irrelevance she delivered to my face, and I clenched my teeth for a moment. "Okay, final warning. I don't work here, ma'am, and I will never open this register." And with that, I then ignored her and continued to work on the scanner scale. I expected her to do something, anything. I wondered if she'd escalate the situation by yelling, or with violence, or by demanding an audience with the unseen all-powerful manager. She did none of these things. She just watched me. In the next 5 minutes, I managed to wedge the brains of this unit out and swap in a replacement board. I restored the dignity of the scanner scale by turning it upright and having it face me again, ensconced next to the conveyor. I then programmed it, which involved scanning a series of barcodes to set various parameters for the scanner. After that, I calibrated the scale. Somewhere between programming it and calibration, she abandoned all her items on the conveyor belt, and I never saw her again. I imagine she returned to the safety of her vehicle and completed her transformation into a bipedal elephant person, and upon doing so began communicating with her grand elephant offspring to settle down in the back, because she's decided to just make bamboo shoots again tonight. I think she actually realized how stupid she'd look attempting to complain about you and to save face left rather than back down and admit that she was wrong. And our next story. No security light allowed? No problem. Years ago, when my wife and I had purchased a home, the builder had told us it might be part of an HOA depending on how many homes they ultimately constructed. We were among the first 5 buyers, so we pretty much had free reign to change what we wanted via permissions from the builders, that those changes would be added to whatever was turned over to the HOA, and for as long as we lived there, the changes could stay. The one change we did was add a motion security light at the back of our fence because my neighbor's kid would smoke something there, and I didn't want to smell it sitting on my patio when I had the windows open on nice evenings. Well, that went up my neighbor's butt sideways for whatever reason, and she refused to believe her kid would be doing that, even though it didn't point towards any other home, just the grass between my fence and the woods. It kept the kids from smoking there without calling the cops on something so foolish and petty, but since it was cleared from the builder, she couldn't do anything. Well, 6 months later, we ended out with an HOA, and she makes it priority 1 to get the lights, several other neighbors followed what I did whose homes faced the wooded area, removed. The requirement to get it changed, since they were builder approved, was 80% of the community, so the only votes to keep came from those of us on the back of the property. So we have to remove them, being permanent changes. Not even 3 days later, her kid's back there smoking. The HOA counter to why I had it was to call the police non-emergency number, but that's absolutely stupid to risk effing some kid's life up when that's an issue his parents, who remember don't believe he does it, deal with. So now I'm pretty livid. This North American land whale cried to the point I had to remove a cheap and non-disruptive fix. She refused to be a parent and keep her kid from impeding on us, so it's time for me to be petty. The next day after her kid first went back there, I go out, buy a 12-foot section of 4x4 wire, concrete, a large planter, and 3 6,000 lumen floodlights, and build essentially a mini portable stadium light setup rigged to the motion sensor, so whenever anyone passed by my fence, instead of being a small area immediately behind my house lit up, the sun came out to the woods with one light giving her home an X-ray. The first time her kid went back there, it was glorious. I got a picture of him with his bong in hand before he skirted off so I could show her proof, and it sent her through the roof getting those free X-rays. I showed her the picture and she still didn't care, saying if it goes off again, I'll call the police. And I was fine with it, because I told her they'd see the same picture I'd just shown her. In reality, they wouldn't, but Martha the Manatee didn't know that, and I didn't expect her to try and call my bluff, which she never did, just complain to the HOA. A lot. In the morning time, I'd lay the contraption down so it couldn't be seen and raise it up after it got dark. About a week after this, I get a summons to the HOA meeting that's happening that week, and since it was disciplinary for my contraption, their lawyer was there and they wanted to hear the case. So I lay everything out from builder to pictures showing how the original light didn't shine any brighter than the one on her porch and couldn't be seen from inside the homes. Her vendetta to change the HOA rules to suit what she wanted. 3 of the 5 other neighbors who had to remove their security lights were also there to argue for getting them back when I went. After about 40 minutes, the lawyer comes back and pretty much said, "Well, Mr. OP, you're right. This isn't a permanent structure, so it technically is allowed. But you can't have a light facing her property any longer. In addition, by the 1st of next month, you will be allowed to reinstall your smaller lights as they did provide a measure of security that benefits the property as a whole." So Martha the Manatee was blessed with another week of the sun on a pole and being mad about it. Those of us who lived facing the woods got our lights back, and after reselling the lights, I made most of my money back I spent on supplies making that monstrosity. It was absolutely worth spending the few $100s to out-petty a bad parent and insufferable neighbor. Really nice of you not to push the kid into the police system. I doubt 99% of people would be that kind after the obnoxious behavior the parent pulled. And our last story. My car was towed by my HOA. For context, I've lived in this townhouse complex in San Diego, California for 7 months now, and have always parked in my garage. A few days ago, I came home late, knew I had to be up early again for work, so I wanted to be considerate and park my car away from my neighbors in a guest spot. I know the parking rules of my HOA and how strict the enforcement is, so I made sure to put up my pass. The guest pass doesn't fit around my car's mirror, so I set it on the dash. Anyway, my car was towed within an hour and a half of parking it. I received no warning or notice of this, and the HOA/parking management had zero consideration or concept of gravity and how it makes things fall. My work 2FA keys were in there and my wallet, so I had to use 2 personal time off days at work because of this, pay $410 to get my car, and it was damaged by the tow truck, SMH. I pay over $3,700 a month to live in a gated community. I have pictures of the damages and where my pass fell on the dash. If they took a picture or even looked at the VIN number, they would have seen it since the black on the bottom of the windshield was in the way. But in the 3 pictures they sent me as proof, the VIN just so happened to be perfectly out of frame. My HOA didn't give me the parking management's number for 2 days, and the owner took 4 calls to get a hold of just to say the worker that did it's asleep at 3 p.m., and he's the only one with the proof pictures. Just looking up on Yelp, Parking Management Solutions says enough about this scam company. It's just ridiculous to get towed within 2 hours, no warning, when I had a pass from my own gated complex because they couldn't look for just a few more seconds. Now the owner's just calling me a liar and ignoring me like the other online reviews said he would. Update. I sought resolution through legal channels. With a strong case, I engaged in legal action against the HOA and parking management. In court, the evidence spoke for itself, highlighting the lack of due diligence on their part. The judge ruled in my favor, acknowledging the unjust towing and damages caused by their negligence. This victory not only reimbursed my expenses, but also prompted a review of the parking management company's practices within the community. That's an infuriating situation. Getting towed without warning despite following the rules is just not right. The HOA and parking management clearly dropped the ball. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.